A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, respected guests. Today, I'm really looking forward to talking with you about a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is the origin of life. I'm going to be talking about the environment that perhaps could have allowed the conditions for life to emerge. And what I also hope that anyone can take away from this is I'm going to be presenting a few tools that I used. I'm not a particular expert in this topic. It's something I'm passionate about that I've heard many speakers talk about. But anyone can use these tools that I'll present to look at anything in the Holy Quran to start looking basically at meanings that could be interpreted behind the verses. So throughout this presentation, what I hope that you'll see is the Holy Quran, in my opinion, supports the theory that life began in hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean. One of the typical theories that many may have heard about is that the world was like a soup, this ocean soup, and out of it life emerged. That is not one of the most popular theories at the moment. There's kind of a number of issues with it. So one of them is hydrothermal vents. So what exactly are hydrothermal vents? We may have heard about them, but there are these chimneys at the bottom of the ocean. They're created in a number of different ways. The ones here that I'm showing are created by water interacting with magma below the Earth's surface. And what happens is the minerals that are coming off of this reaction create chimneys. Around these chimneys, the water is heated to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. It's extremely hot water. But that does not mean that it's devoid of life. In fact, there's a lot of different creatures living here, including tube worms, shown on the right-hand side, these long tube-like structures, which I'll mention in a moment. So when I began learning about origin of life theories and looking into different topics, I remembered a Faith Matters episode. It's an MTA show. I highly recommend anyone look at them. On YouTube, where Maulana Jahangir Khan mentioned in the Holy Quran, the tree of Zaqqum describes hydrothermal vents. So looking at these verses, I'm just going to read 65 onwards. It is a tree that springs forth in the bottom of hell. The fruit thereof is as though it were the heads of serpents, and they shall eat of it and fill their bellies therewith. Then will they have, in addition to it, a mixture of boiling water to drink. So what he explained was, if you even just look at this structure, it kind of looks like a tree. It has some branches. It's springing forth from the bottom of the ocean, often from magma, so it's a kind of hellish environment. The heads of serpents, he mentioned these tube worms. They're very similar. And in addition, the water is boiling. So again, when I started thinking about this more, I found this very interesting, especially that this is one of the theories that this is where life began. And I wanted to understand more what the environmental conditions are where life originated. So I think that many of us have heard that jinn refers to microscopic creatures. So the first tool I'd like to present is using Al-Islam, the Holy Quran and Al-Islam, and using the search box to search for keywords that you're interested in. In the past, I've searched for things like water, creation. It's very interesting, the verses that come up, and then you can look at the context of these verses. So when I looked at these verses, it says in chapter 55, verse 16, and the jinn he created from the flame of fire. What I like doing is taking these words and going to the Holy Quran dictionary and looking at the other meanings that you can take from it. But for me, I'm not an expert in Arabic, so to jump from this to the dictionary is kind of challenging. So what you can do is you can find the word that you're interested in. If you hover over it, it'll show the definition. And then you can go to the Quranic corpus, corpus.quran.com. There might be other tools, but this is what I use. And you can click on word by word. When you go, you can find every verse in the Holy Quran And this is not a Jamaat website, it's a different website, so you might have to toy with the verse numbers. But you can find the word that you're interested in, and then you can click on it, and it will show you the root. So in this case, the root of this word was mim ra jim. I then went back to alislam.com, to the Dictionary of the Holy Quran, and looked at the entry for mim ra jim. This takes a little bit of practice, but it's not too bad if you use the alphabet as a reference. So another definition of this particular word was a fire without smoke. I think sometimes we've seen it written as a smokeless flame as well. So that made me think, because the hydrothermal vents that we were looking at before definitely had smoke. They had a lot of black smoke coming out of it. But in fact, there's another type of vent that some researchers believe that life originated at, and that's alkaline hydrothermal vents. So recently I've been reading the book, The Vital Question by Nick Lane. He's a professor in London that I've seen speak on this topic. And in his book, he argues that it's not the black smoker hydrothermal vents where life originated, as some people think. It is these alkaline hydrothermal vents. So in the next picture, if you look on the right-hand side, that is the black smokers that we were just looking at. There's smoke coming out of the top. On the left-hand side, this is an alkaline hydrothermal vent. So they can often be quite ghostly looking. And one thing that immediately stands out is that there's no visible smoke coming out. However, this does not mean that there's nothing happening. And in fact, in this case, there's a huge amount of hydrogen gas coming out of these vents. This is significant for a number of reasons, but one is that a smokeless flame, in my opinion, you could interpret hydrogen gas as this. It's flammable. It does carry a huge amount of energy again, but it's smokeless. And I just thought it was so beautiful how closely that I feel this describes the conditions needed for the creation of jinn. Finally, I just want to touch on one more basic science topic. So another aspect I came across was that alkaline vents separate two different seawater conditions, and this is significant for the kind of push towards life being created. So if you look at the image, on the left-hand side is a simplification of the vent itself, and on the right-hand side, you have a very, very zoomed-in microscopic image of the outside of one of these vents. And I don't want you to focus too much on what's going on in here, but just that the interior part is alkaline or very high pH, and the exterior of the ocean is very low pH. And at that time, a few billion years ago, the pH would have been much lower. This is significant because at a cell level, these type of differences are very important in driving different mechanisms. Cells like equilibrium, they like balance. If there's a big jump in pH, for instance, the conditions could drive any sort of kind of protocell or basic cell wall that had formed at the vents to start creating cellular machinery and begin at least moving the pH. DNA, RNA, other things like that is a completely different topic. So this is just a condition where a kind of pre-cell may have formed. And again, thinking back to this mim ra jim entry, I found it interesting that another definition of this particular root can be he mixed a thing with another thing or two things together. And in the Holy Quran, it's he, God, has let the two seas flow freely, yet one does not become mixed with the other, in chapter 25, verse 54. And I thought it was interesting that there's a separation caused by these vents. And in addition, in 25:55, the following verse, it mentions something about man being created from water. So I feel like there is a connection. I don't know whether this is the connection, but I feel like there's something significant there. So just to kind of finish with some other topics that I'm interested in for those who are interested in this topic, Archaea and bacteria having two different origins. These are two different types of life forms that we have. DNA and RNA having a chimeric beginning, so being mixed at the start. I think there is some support in the Holy Quran to support this. In addition, there's something called assembly theory, which is very interesting. These are just topics that if you're interested, to think about or talk to me about after. And one aspect of this, the kind of co-creator of assembly theory, Lee Cronin, has said that life is a universe developing a memory. And I thought this kind of made me think back to Fawzia Shah's talk last year about a kind of memory in quantum physics. The last point I'd like to make is fourth Khalifa, radiallahu anhu, in Revelation, Rationality, Knowledge, and Truth, said that, in fact, the entire research of scientists and their efforts to unravel the origin of life are no more advanced than the very primordial organic soup, that kind of basic theory I mentioned in the beginning, the mysteries of which they are attempting to fathom. It is a study at its nascent stage, or at the very beginning. So this is, again, a topic that don't think that everything has been discovered. We know very little about it, and there are many different competing theories. So finally, I just want to acknowledge the Salam Fellows Program, Jazakallah, for supporting me here and connecting me with other scientists. And just to go over the tools I use, the Holy Quran, Faith Matters, the Quranic Corpus, the Dictionary of the Holy Quran, and a couple other books. So Jazakallah, and I'm happy to speak after.